super tight time. We're going to go ahead and get started. But before I start yapping, actually, you're that way. I'm going to hand over the reins to Melissa.
Yeah, I'd just like to welcome everybody. So thank you guys so much. I'm Melissa Chapman, and I'd like to welcome you here today on behalf of Joanna, of AdOps Online, and of myself to What Do You Do? The Ultimate Question. So Joanna is a potentialist, which means she helps people understand their potential and she helps them explain that potential to other people. I had the honor of meeting Joanna a number of years ago at an event, and I was immediately taken with her sparkle and personality. So I'm so happy to have her here to take us through this event. It is interactive, so please, I encourage you to throw that volunteer hand up and have some fun. And with that, I will hand it back to you, Joanna.
Awesome.
The other direction.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Big shout out to both Melissa and Rob. Gosh, Rob, I don't actually want to think about how old we were, how long ago it was the first time we've met. Like many of you, I'm guessing you have gotten up to shenanigans with both of them. I do have a more recent recollection of having some sort of crocodile or alligator put on my head, I think at some Ad Monsters event. I know for many of you, this is kind of normal operating procedure. For those of you that I know, hi, long time no see. For those of you that don't know, just on a little bit of why I am particularly excited about this particular event is I used to be you once upon a time. I spent most of my career in AdOps and ad tech and revenue operations for many, many years for brands such as CNET and CBS, and most recently for Pandora. And about 5 years ago, I can't believe it's been that long, when the Pandora gig came to an end, I thought, you know what, I think it's time to do something different. And 5 years later, I now basically have channeled my inner Rob Beeler and get to wear sequins to work for a living, which, you know, who wouldn't love that? But yeah, when I left Pandora, I was kind of obsessed, not even in a little way, but very obsessed around this idea of how do you talk about yourself? How do you talk about value? How do you talk about what it is you do? Because like probably all of you, the only people who actually knew what I did for a living historically were the people who did the same job. I think quite confidently, I could say that even my boss at Pandora really had no idea what we were doing and what on earth we were all talking about 90% of the time, which I will also own a lot of the time was awesome. And I completely used that to my advantage. And a lot of the time I was like, oh, you just keep telling me to cut headcount and you don't actually understand the cost of doing that. And all of the challenges that come from the AdOps world. And all honesty up front, I will also say that there were a lot of reasons for me to move on from Pandora, but I made the career eliminating error at the end of my tenure of Pandora and forgot to actually explain to people what my value was. At the time, you know, Pandora had just gone through its hockey stick moment. We'd scaled revenue operations from like $100 million to $1 billion over 3 years. We were, I think at the time, serving something like 15 billion ads a month. Scaling all of that and the team that we had built to do that was absolutely bananas. Then add the fact that we, like many of you guys who are in multi-channel, had to do business in digital and in the language of radio. So we had to understand eCPMs and header bidding and programmatic in the digital world, but also understand AQH and QM and all of the language of radio, which made life infinitely more complicated. And then, as they do in companies, we got a new CEO. And when the new CEO started, I did what most of us do in a leadership role. We went, oh my God, my team is awesome. Look at all this amazing stuff they've done. Look at all of these amazing metrics they've hit, and look at our yield optimization and the culture and all of the good stuff that the team has done is what I talked about. What I forgot to talk about was what my vision was for the future. And so what happened, not surprisingly, and I won't say this is the only reason, but it certainly was a big part of it, is because I didn't re-audition for my job with the new CEO, he didn't think I had a vision for the future. And so when they were making decisions around who and what was the leadership team to take Pandora forward, they didn't think I was the right person to lead the team anymore because I hadn't articulated a vision. Now, I will also say at the time I was completely burned out and didn't have the really clear, strong vision that I had had when I started at Pandora. And trust me, my first interview with the CEO of Pandora back in 2010, I literally drew on a whiteboard in the interview exactly where I thought he was, where I thought they needed to go, and a straw man of how to get there. And the CEO was like, yes, I want that. I didn't have that same sort of clarity of vision for Pandora for the next, 5 years. And so when I sat down and had a real conversation with myself about it, I was like, actually, maybe you are done, which is why leaving Pandora is probably one of the most delightful exits I've ever gone through. While I was super sad to leave the team and really loved my time there, I wasn't the right person to take it forward. But it really brought me back to this singular idea that had, if I'm being really honest, surprised me in the past when new leadership had come in. And it's just this singular idea that every decision made about you and your opportunities is made in a room that you are not in. Which at the time I was like, oh shit, like, hang on a second. Can one do anything about it? And I got super obsessed about this singular idea, which, long story short, led me to where I am today, because I continue to be obsessed about this idea. Because as somebody who spent 20-something years having people really not understand what I did for a living and fundamentally the value of it, I thought, wow, not only in the world of AdOps is this important, but this is kind of a universal problem. So little bit of context and intro into what I was talking about. So I want to talk you through some of these concepts and how I think you can think about them, and how you too, like I have, can start to take agency in conversations in rooms that you're not in. And what does it mean, and how do you think about this? Because for the last 5 years, I have been teaching these concepts and helping people have better conversations about this and ultimately take ownership of their value. So we've already established this is a true statement. Every decision made about you is made in a room that you're not in. Now, what you decide to do about that decision is entirely up to you. But somebody is having Rob, as an example, is known for his colorful jackets and being a bit of a personality. We all, whether we like it or not, already have a personal brand. The question is it the one that you want to have? The other thing that I think is really interesting about this statement is not only are people making decisions about you in rooms that you're not in, but you are making decisions about people in rooms that they are not in. And this is also a universal truth. And, I've been shouting about this idea for, the last 5 years, almost incessantly. The COVID-19 changes that have happened most recently have accelerated this idea in a big way too. I will never forget the layoffs I had to do back in the dot-com bust of the early 2000s, and how much I was afraid as an individual that I would get laid off, and how awful it was to lay people off. And so if any of you have had to go through that, or whether you've had to be the person to lay off or impacted by your employment status, my heart goes out to you. And really, for the people who are impacted and for the people who are now having to think about how do you pick up the pieces and continue to move forward with a tighter team, What happened, and I am going to talk about my own experience here, that whole decision made in a room that you're not in, when you go through something dramatic like that, and so dramatic, like, well, the globe technically went from what I call a seller's market in January to literally a buyer's market today when it comes to talent. But when you're going through that sort of thing, you are looking at, and this is why I think this is important, what is the future going to look like? When decisions are made in our room, in a room that we're not in, or we're making decisions about people in the future, we're actually saying, like, who are the people who are going to be able to solve problems in the future, justified by what we have accomplished in the past. And this future language is where I want you to really pay attention, because so often when we look at our own value and what we have all been taught to think about, it's all past activities. You know, you think about your resume or your accomplishments or your 360, it's all historical. And reality is, you know, when you're thinking about who you're going to hire, who you're going to put on the project, who you're going to put in the new division because there's this new thing that has been created by some startup to plug in to the world of ad tech, you're thinking about who's got the right kind of mind, who understands how to navigate an ambiguous future, and you think about who are the right people to solve a problem in the future. And so really, as I think about this whole every decision made about you is made in a room that you're not in, who they're talking about and who they're engaging with is the potential future you as much as your past you and your experience. Okay, so what does that mean? A bunch of stuff. So I said we were going to get interactive. Here is where our first opportunity is too. So I'd like you all to go to slido.com. You can do this on your phone. You don't have to download anything. They're not going to know who you are. I won't know who you are on there either. It's all anonymous. And type in code 42388. If you miss this, by the way, Kylie's going to drop the link and the URL into chat where you can see it as well. So slido.com 42388. Once you're there, just give us the thumbs up. Kylie's going to watch for you. And we are going to do our first, let me make a point exercise. Do we have thumbs, Kylie?
We've got a couple thumbs. Yeah, I think we're good.
Awesome. Okay. First experience. I would like you all, using single words, to describe to me, using this tool, what you are known for. Like if someone was going to say, who are you? What do you do? What are you known for? What words would you use to describe yourself? Single words. And yes, if you see somebody else type in a word, like I would say an example would be technical. Feel free to repeat it, because as you will see, we're going to get an awesome word cloud. I want to see who the winning words are for this group. I have a hunch. Organized and reliable seem to be so far the winning in a big way. I've got 24 in. You can put more than one word in there. Well, God, it's the race to organized and reliable winning. I'm trying to see if there are any. Resilient, I would totally agree with. 100%. We're all a bunch of weebles. Can't knock us down, we will bounce right up. Okay, I think we've got, if you want to keep sending them in, I'm always interested to see what the final word cloud looks like. We're actually going to share this back with everything. But here is, when you're thinking about decisions made about you in rooms that you're not in. I'm guessing many of you have been or are aspiring to management or leadership roles. And here's the thing I want to just seed plant with you is when you are hiring somebody, don't they all have to be organized? Isn't that a requirement of your job? And well, wouldn't you be fired technically if you weren't organized, if you weren't reliable, if you weren't operational, if you weren't a problem solver, all of those sorts of things? So this is when I come back to this whole idea of what are you known for, how do you talk about what you do, et cetera, we tend as people to use across the board, and yes, I kind of cheated you all into this, but we tend to use the generic words to describe us. It is, we go back to the productivity and what have you done words, as opposed to really starting to think about what are the words one would use to describe you that teach how you think? Because if your value is based on your future potential, then aren't those the words that you want to be known for? And specifically and I am going to say our industry, because I still follow all of the stuff because I actually love it and I think it's fascinating, and I'm still completely obsessed with audio. But what I hear when I hear our peers talk about ourselves, I do hear about, look at all of the things I've done. Look at all of the numbers, look at all of the, look at our error rates, because we are part of the supply chain where there's a delivery of a thing. But what it makes us sound like is a bunch of machines and a bunch of robots. And what I know, because I have been in the room with many of you, is in the AdOps world, our entire career has been about mitigating the ambiguous future. There was not a quarter that went by that there wasn't some new technology or some new ask from the sales team to do something that they were like, why can't you do this? I've already sold it. You need to be able to figure out how to do it. That actually one of your biggest strengths is your ability to figure out how to solve a problem in the future that has A, never been solved before, B, often requires some sort of technical shenanigans, and C, looks seamless to the client and the customer at the end of the day, and do that on a timeline that is usually, one could say, irrational. Would you say that that was a better way of describing what your value is, if I was going to put it in the most generic sense? Yeah. You're all brilliant, by the way, and fantastic, which is why I have mad respect for the industry. That description is way more valuable and interesting than organized. And when I think about, the endless, especially for those of you in leadership roles, the endless conversation about resources, when we make ourselves and our team sound like machines, then the only thing they're going to know to optimize for is efficiency. And yes, optimizing for efficiency in our processes is super important, but the conversation shifts when you start talking about the bottom line value to your organization. So while these are all really fantastic words and really important to be able to do, they are what I call table stakes words. And so the tip I give everybody as you're working on this for yourself, or if you're working on this for somebody else, is always think about, like, if I was hiring for this job, what words would I just be like, well, this just has to exist. It's part of breathing. And actually put them, like, they're the passwords, and start thinking about what your future words might be. Okay. So now that we're saying we don't want to talk about the past, we want to talk about your brilliant brain and how you think, there's a couple of other ideas that I'd like to share with you guys just to get the gray matter going, because we've already established that you are all brilliant. So first of all, you are way, way, way more interesting than your title. This, I think, for the world of AdOps is actually probably one of the hardest things. We all have titles that don't actually mean anything. And in the world, we are all in marketing. We all know that what you call a thing makes a difference. You'll notice that I didn't actually have Melissa tell you that I was the CEO and founder of the Amplify Lab, because who cares? plus everyone and their dog can call themselves the CEO of something these days, it means nothing. And so I've made up a word, and I call myself a potentialist because I think it's a thing, and I'm going to create a whole thing around it. So as you were talking about yourself, what we tend to do in those first introductions is actually give people our title. And I sit here and I go, isn't there an opportunity to tell a better story about you? Second of all, the other thing I want you to think about, so if this is a story about how people are having conversations about you in rooms that you're not in, your resume is not your whole story. In today's world, it is, unfortunately, other than maybe your LinkedIn profile, which is just a jazzier version of your resume, it only tells the story of your past. It does not tell the story of your potential. And there's some pretty horrific numbers around the world of getting a job, and especially for those of you that are out on the market. Yes, you need to have a resume. Yes, you need to make sure all of the keywords are on your resume. And if you haven't, there's, I heard of some engineers recently who are actually taking, scanning the job description, changing the font to white, shrinking it down, and embedding it in their resume. So as your resume goes through the applicant tracking systems, it's already got the keywords that the job description needs embedded in the resume so that they have a higher opportunity of being in the consideration set. So genius move from engineering friends, if you want to use that one as well. I thought it was fairly brilliant. But that's the reality. That first step in the hiring process is those applicant tracking systems, is the apply here buttons, and all they're doing is optimizing for your keywords, which again, you are more than that. And some of the horrifying math, and I don't have the updated numbers, unfortunately, is over 17 billion resumes was submitted in 2017, which if you extrapolate that out, basically means that every single job in the United States of America had over 200 applicants per job, which actually means that the number per opening was even higher. So just hitting that apply button means you should, on average, have 199 competitors. I know, horrifying number. Here's the other thing. If you get a reference in from a third party or an internal person who knows the hiring manager, you have a 300% higher likely, you're more likely to get the job at the end of the day. That who you know in the process of hiring has become far more important than it was yesterday. And as I said, we just shifted from a seller's market to a buyer's market. Making sure you network out who you are and why you are awesome is going to be critically important for everybody. Here's my pro tip here. Sending people your resume doesn't tell the whole story of you. You need to actually start talking about how you think, what problems you solve, because that is the thing that they buy. So your cover letter, which might have your resume, is critically important to have right. And your cover letter should be custom to the person and should talk more about how do you solve problems in the future, so that people can say, I have those problems and this is the kind of character that I'm looking for. So super important process in the recruiting step. Last thing that I want to share is this idea of self-promotion. It is not a dirty word, and it's actually critically and pretty important. When I think about what my job is with the people that I work with, it's actually to teach you how to get up right up to the line of bragging without crossing over, because nobody likes somebody who brags about themselves, because ew. Self-promotion is actually a vehicle so people know that you exist. So think about that. Every decision made about you and your opportunities is made in a room that you're not in. First question, do they even know that you exist? Do they know your name? Do they even know you are there? And if you think about, gosh, for the more senior people on the call, like we all know each other. It is the what are you known for and what is your reputation within the world? And it's because we have seen each other. Self-promotion, if you think about it as yourself, is reach and frequency, but for human beings. So actually telling people how you think and your value within an organization, better yet, teaching them how you think and your value in your organization actually helps you be part of the consideration set so that once you are, you have somebody in that room who can actually articulate your unique value. So if you don't tell anybody, nobody will know. This is, I will also note why all of us, well, you all have a job, I do have a job doing this, but we all have jobs because the entire advertising industry is built on concepts like reach and frequency, and explaining to people what a product is. And in the world of work, the product of you is your time. And that is the thing that you are buying and selling. So take a page out of all of the lessons that we all learned in working in media for as long as we have, and think about yourself like you're a product and say, you know, what are my, yes, you've got a bunch of features. That's what your resume says. But what is your value? What problems do you solve? And making sure that you teach people over time so that they understand how to buy you. And by the way, if you can make buying you easy, even better, because the clearer you are about who you are and your value, the easier it is for people to buy your time. And that is the thing that we all get hired to do. Okay. Let me just touch on this because I've been a bit lectury and I want to get into demo again. Last thing, and this is just more of a, when I think about the future of work and where we're going, just an idea I want to share with you as well. You know, I believe that all of you, because of the world that you live in the world of ad tech, we are always kind of dancing on the edge of technology and what it could possibly do. And what has happened over the last decade is both business and technology has shifted. And it's shifted from kind of the binary mechanistic language of the past. Like if I think about, oh, there's part of me that kind of wants to go back to the early 2000s when DoubleClick was new and there weren't the infinite levels of complexity and tags and everything that could be in the ad tech world that make things hard, because it was very simple. It was ones and zeros. You know, you think about the different measures of success for advertising, much simpler than a little bit more complicated. It's really shifted. What I believe hasn't shifted is the language of humans. We still talk about productivity, title, tenure, skills, when it's really about our ability to think, it's empathy, it's actually all of those human skills. And when I think on a very macro level, you know, the robots are coming, or in our world, AI is coming. I know it's been coming for a really long time and there's a long way to go. But the more as human beings we sound like machines and robots and code, the more competitive we are going to be with technology. And what I think is really amazing about human beings is actually our ability to do things in the future, our ability to experiment and be creative. And so it's time for us kind of holistically, whatever your industry, to talk in that way. Okay, so enough with me talking. And time, you're all like, what the hell was Cinderella? Well, I also call myself the fairy godmother, because now I want to do my party trick and actually show you rather than talk to you. So who is feeling super brave this morning? And Rob, you are not allowed to do this. I'll catch you on another day. Who would like to get a better way to answer the question, what do you do? And actually see how you can change your own language right now. Just wave at the camera. All right, Chris, I saw you down there waving. Kylie, can we unmute Chris? Or shall I? Oh, there we go.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, we can hear you. Okay, for the rest of you, while Chris and I are doing a little thing, you are also going to have to participate, because I want you all, do you know lots of people on this call, or are they a bunch of strangers?
I'd say mostly strangers. I've met Melissa and Rob a few times.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so for those of you that don't know Chris, you're about to get to meet him. For those of you that do, I want you to pretend for just a second. We are at a conference, and Chris, I want to caveat which kind of conference we're at. And yes, this is post-COVID. So in the world of answering the question, what do you do? Normally I do something fairly generic, but I actually have a question for you first. Like, who actually do you need to teach professionally what it is you do? Like, who is your audience?
I'm sorry, I'm not clear what you're asking.
Well, so you remember how I said, like, people need to actually understand what it is you do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so as an example, if you were going to an Ad Monsters conference, answering the question, what do you do there, would be very different from you're going to, I don't know, CES or let's pretend for some magical moment you actually got invited to Cannes, which we don't generally, but whatever. But let's pretend you're there. And it's, you know, they are agency people or advertisers, or maybe your boss doesn't know exactly what your value is. Like, who would you actually like to understand better your value?
Gotcha. Okay. One of the things I've done recently I've actually been in a job search for a while. And I've reached out to Melissa and Rob about this mentor-mentee program they have. And my audience there was essentially a hiring manager or, you know, someone that may have had connections and just sort of wanted to be generous and help me connect dots.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to do this specifically for hiring manager. That's helpful. Now, you saw Cinderella on the earlier page, so I'm going to explain to everybody for a second. This is why I call myself the fairy godmother, and I do use the Cinderella construct to do this, because what I think is interesting about Cinderella, the character, is if I asked you all what she was known for right now, you'd all be like, kind of a pathetic person who needed to be rescued by a bunch of different people, including a prince, and yeah, whatever. Even, I think the only people who are still excited with Cinderella are like 7 and 8-year-old girls. Good for them. And then they go through junior high and we all get a bit jaded, right? I think we're all looking at the story a little bit differently. And when I talk about potentialism later, you'll hear why I think basically Cinderella is awesome and we should all hire her yesterday. But when you think about that first key interaction with Cinderella and the fairy godmother, and Chris, in this scenario, you are Cinderella, by the way. When you think about that interaction, the fairy godmother did not come in and go, oh, here are your strengths and weaknesses, and we need to improve your weaknesses. And she didn't talk about any of her faults. She just said, oh, well, hang on a second. You want to go to the ball? Fine. Well, if you show up in that ratty little outfit and no shoes and not in the right ride, they're not even going to let you pass the front gate. You want to get to the ballroom floor. And by the way, sweetie, once you get there, it's your job to kind of close the prince, so to speak. But I will get you to the ballroom floor. And so when you're thinking about this and this idea of value for your teams or for other people you work with, the first question I always ask, which I just did with Chris just now, was what is your ball? Like, where is it you are trying to go? Because I'll tell you, if Cinderella had wanted to go to a basketball game, I'm thinking there would be a slightly different outfit, right? She'd be kicked out if she showed up in the dress. So back to you, Chris. So hiring manager. So when you first meet a hiring manager and they say, and let's just limit it to the, what do you do? How do you answer the kind of the open question of the, what do you do? Like, Chris, tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you say today?
I don't work in AdOps, so that's one little caveat. I generally explain to someone what I feel is a good thing is this sort of large cross section of experiences I've had across broadcast television, across digital video content, across the different styles of those, you know, news versus sports versus entertainment versus documentary versus blah, blah, blah. And really just try to paint a picture of someone that's come through ranks and has, you know, kept with an industry that's been very difficult to stay connected to, and having experience creating a lot of different styles of content.
Okay.
Sort of like
And
a
then
10,000 foot view.
Okay. Only because we'd probably know this in this context. What kind of a job are you looking for?
Well, I mean, I still want to stay in the creative field. When it came to trying to go through Rob and Melissa for their mentee mentor program, I wanted to use, you know, essentially a storytelling skill to help, say, AdOps companies sell what they've got to, you know, to customers, be it, you know, other companies, other people. Using my ability
So-
to write and pull sort of vague things together and market it back to people. I mean, essentially, if I'm going to work for an ESPN, I'm marketing ESPN content to an audience. So using that.
Okay. Okay. Super helpful. Okay. I hope you are all paying attention, because you are now all going to sort of, kind of, the question on here be feedback to Chris. And I'm just going to say, remember, you are anonymous, and this is helpful to Chris because we're going to make it different in a minute. But I would like you all to judge Chris immediately. You will get to make a decision in a room, well, that he is in, but not really, based on the introduction that he just gave us. How excited are you to continue this conversation on a scale from 1 to 10? 10 being abso-freaking-lutely, 1 being, yeah, I'd be counting the minutes to end this conversation. I'm going to see some more come in. All right. Well, we'll let the votes continue to come in, but I want to come back to Chris. We ended up, what, at a 5 point something, 5.3. Chris, the good news is you're just a smidge above average. I'm assuming, however, you would like a slightly higher score than a 5 point something.
Of course.
Just out of curiosity, though, somebody put in a 10 or a 9. Is anybody willing to own up? Because I'm curious always as to why, because I think this is always an interesting result for people to hear. Are you willing to own up? I've got a lot of hidden cameras, so we don't know. Well, if you want to, if you can ping in chat who you are, and then Kylie, can we watch for who it is? I would love to be, we might come back to you as to why, because that's interesting. All right, Chris, I would like to see if we can do a better job on setting the stage in your conversation, because you think about what was challenging about what just happened there is I wasn't entirely sure who you were and what you were all about. And that first conversation you have with somebody really sets the stage and the tone and tenor for who you are and why you're awesome. And I want to give you a nice opener for your interview. So I have a couple of questions for you. So I kind of get what you, so you're a multi-platform storyteller / marketer. Is that, if I was going to bucket it in words? Like,
That would work.
You can do anything. Okay.
That would work.
So why are you good at what you do? I want you to brag for just a second.
I think I look at things differently. Like when you said, you know, when you think about Cinderella, you sort of think of like the old dirty shabby. I think of the opposite. Actually, I just think of like the ball gown and like the princess side. That was what popped in my head first, the glass slippers. So maybe that's just indicative of my looking at, you know, glass half empty versus half full, sort of just trying to, not to be contrary to be a pain in the ass, but just because, you know, I think there's other perspectives that are worth exploring. And so I try and find different ways to tell stories, different subjects, unsung heroes, kind of
Okay.
odd things.
So why do you think that's important when it comes to storytelling?
Stands out. It's not one more of the same thing.
And is it, you mentioned unsung heroes, is that a pattern for you, or like, is that what you're like, what are you known for, if I was to ask other people? Or more importantly, what is it you would like to, would you like to be known as this unsung hero person, or is it ferreting out the original idea?
I guess I pull that from a stage of life that was, you know, rewarding when it came to the career, but I'm trying to focus on other things now, so feels slightly like a step backwards. But, you know, I think to be known for somebody that can take vague information and concepts and turn it into something that is seamless on the other end. I mean, if you think about like, you know, breaking news, as much as I'm like happy to be out of the news world, especially lately, you know, airplane pilot lands an airplane in the Hudson River 15 minutes before your show's going, you know, on at 5 p.m. and you've spent an entire day preparing for that show, and in you know 3 seconds your entire day has changed, and you have to completely turn on a dime, create different results, like, you know, instantaneously. So I think that is something that is different about me that I would like to have come across with more worth, because maybe in my own mind I'm a little scared to say it, but you know, when I say breaking news or anything sort of related to that, it's like I can either see people like, oh, he's news, what does he know about us?
Well, I mean, although I would argue that, like, you think about the announcement by PepsiCo this morning that they are going to eliminate the Aunt Jemima brand, and that happened in 24 hours based on a TikTok video, right? So I think, like,
look at police departments retooling. Exactly, I completely agree.
Well, so maybe that's actually the thread to pull, and when I do this, and this is for everybody, like when you're thinking about what it is you want to teach somebody, like we've gone from kind of some, and this is kind of the process. You start with the generic stuff where you're kind of like, okay, who is the audience and what is it I want to teach them? And then you focus down into, so what I got from you is like uniqueness is something that's important to you, but this whole, how do you take vagary into what looks like the obvious, a seamless, how do you take vagary and manifest something compelling? And to make it compelling, it almost has to be seamless, but there's an element of speed in your reaction that is the added value there that you said, you just told me additionally that you want out there. So this whole, how do you start to think about it for yourself? And if you're working with us directly, we actually go through the slightly richer, deeper conversation around like, who are you and what are you all about? Because here's what's also true. Like I have had the honor and delight of getting to do this work with everybody from a 3-star general to, I got to do this with Ray Dalio once, which kind of blew my mind, to, you know, Miss America pageant contestants who are standing up there saying like, this is who I am and what I'm all about. And every single person I work with goes through a bit of a process of like fairly generic, kind of what everybody is, to, well, hang on a second, actually there's something special, down to actually there's something really special and unique about me that only I do. Because I'll tell you, the millennials have it right. You are all actually unique, special flowers, because we have all had different experiences. We've all gone through different things. Like this is actually true. And it's that thing, what I have found across the board is the thing that you are weirdly, uniquely good at, the thing that feels like breathing to you. And Chris, I'm curious whether this ability to shift on a dime is kind of where you are in your best element. Like that thing is something that people really struggle to go, wait, hang on a second, is this really a thing? And often don't value it themselves, but is really ultimately what you are known for. And you're right, like how do you make sure that it's not bucketed into where people automatically will assume who you are? So I actually want to come back and correct and confirm, is this ability to do everything that you do, but then also react to the moment of now, where you are at your best and having the most fun for you?
I mean, I hate to be vague, but yes and no. I mean, it is, when I look for employment opportunities in, say, the ad tech world, or in a different format of video that is not so now, I think my ability to shift like that for people that don't traditionally hire people with that shift on a dime background, or produce content, like you think of like a, you know, a documentary that takes 4 or 5 months to shoot and 6 months to edit, like that's a really long time. You know, I'm talking about like being in television, you know, reporting a number of stories that are on air,
Yeah.
7 hours after you walk in the door. So I think that ability to change like that is really valuable for, Rob Beeler and his company that needs to, oh my God, this company that we use in China to, build our thing, their plant just blew up and now we can't build our thing anymore. What do we do? So like,
yeah. Okay. I just wanted to confirm, because and this is the beauty of, you get to choose your own adventure with this for all of us, right? You could say, well, I used to be known for this really great thing, and now I want to be known for something different. Like, good Lord, I'm the poster child for that. In reality, I used to be known for something before AdOps, because I had a life before then too. You can absolutely reteach your audience who you are and what you're all about. But that's why I always confirm on this. So what you could say in your introduction is, we work in a world today where everything from tea to technology needs a storyteller. What's challenging about storytelling, whether it is tea or technology, is that you are taking ultimately vague information and making it seamlessly understandable for the person who's listening. When you think about today's world, on top of that is the dynamics of today's world are also changing the story overnight. It's almost like we're all running storytelling news stations. So how do you navigate the need for timing while balancing taking something vague and making it a seamless story, is where I bring the most value to the table. And I'm looking for an opportunity to do that. All right. Oh, we did record this, thank God. How do you feel about that introduction?
I need that back again.
We'll get it to you, Chris. Make sure you send Kylie your email address through chat. Well, actually, we've got it on your registration. We'll get it back to you. Okay. Before I uncover what I just did, I want you all to come back and think about the different, like, introduction number 2. Now you're back in that hiring manager chair and you heard the whole conversation. How much do you want to continue this conversation now? Let's give an after score to Chris. Oh, it's actually an after score from me. How'd I do on this? A little bit better. I know I could have done better. Not bad. So we did a bit bigger of a bump. Gosh, whoever gave him a 10 last time and gave him a 0, there's not this time. I'm a little sad. Did we go backwards? I don't think so, but we still get an improvement. So we got up to a 7.6. Not bad. I think, only because I'm self-judging as well. I think on this one, I went a little wordy. It needs to actually be tightened again. Because what I was trying to do in your introduction was actually balance your 3 key pieces of future value. One is your ability to take vague information and make it into a seamless story. Actually, it's 2. There's that, and your ability to pivot on whatever the market is driving at the same time. What we were having to do within that as well is this 3rd element, which is a bit weird, which is actually reminding people that this concept of breaking news, and maybe that's the better way of doing it. Like in the news world, breaking news means the story you have been working on all day takes a second seat. In the reality of business today, breaking news can also pivot your business. And so when you're telling stories about your business, you need to actually approach your storytelling the same way you do a news desk. Now, doing that while also taking a vague idea and making it look seamless to the reader is actually what you're ultimately trying to do. So it's combining both this newsroom approach of being able to pivot on a dime and this ability to tell a seamless story that actually allows the modern company to work effectively. See, that was version 2.0 was better, right? I told a little story there. Version 2.0 was way better because I talked through it. And this is the other thing, folks. Like, this is the process. There is a little bit of talking through because we teach each other through talking about each other. Because just on the camera people, how many by wave of hands now kind of understand what Chris is really great at doing, but also wouldn't bucket him in newsroom only? And I've just made you super easy to buy. Now, the question now becomes, what is the job description? What do they want to buy? And do you need, because you'll want to tweak that as you go along, but your core elements are the speed of a newsroom with this vague to seamless idea. And it, again, reach and frequency, if you are consistent about that over time, people are going to remember. Okay, so now let me kind of unpack the magic a little bit here of what I just did. So first of all, as you all know, your marketing team would be fired if they feature dumped a product on customers. We do not sell features. We sell, when we're selling products, ideas or problems that need to be solved. All I did there when I was talking with Chris is I uncovered what his idea was. What is the problem? And his was both. His was an idea about how companies need to act a little bit more like newsrooms, and this whole idea of the vagary to seamless. So what is the idea or problem you're trying to solve? What is the solution to that? And that you are the solution. Because when you listen to version 2, as it got a higher score, you went, I get that problem. I like that solution. I like you. Because we're buying his idea, how he thinks, rather than what he does. Now, does he then need to come back and go, here are some examples of what I've done? Absolutely. But you think about like sales 101, this is what you do. So think about what idea you have about in the future, and or problem you're really great at solving. What is the solution to it? And then introduce yourself. And it starts to teach your audience who you are and what you're all about. So how do you even start figuring out who that is? You actually should go ask people. Like if you're stuck with like, I don't know what I'm really great at doing, or how do I find that? While I love that Rob is doing the mentor-mentee things, I'm a bit done with the word mentor because I think it tells a big story about all sorts of things that things are not. I look at people in different categories. There's people who I think are mirrors, who show up and say, look, this is what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing. There's potentialists who are people who see your future. There's connectors, there's advisors and amplifiers. Think about who all of these people are in your network and go ask them, hey, what am I known for? What kind of problems am I really great at solving? When you're talking about me in a room I'm not in, what are you saying? Do note, because you're asking them in person, they'll be super polite. But the first step in figuring out how to articulate your value is actually doing market research on you, the same way you do a product. Second thing is, okay, what are they saying? Let's find the bold, unique, and compelling thing there. And the compelling part is actually putting it in the problem solution format as opposed to product vomiting your unique awesome on somebody. And it does need to be unique, because do you remember the word cloud exercise at the beginning? If your words are the same, you are not memorable. You're just not, and you need to be remembered for something. And then last but not least, once you've actually figured out how to talk about your value and who you are and what you're all about, like with everything else, you want to market test. And there's some really simple ways to market test your language. So Chris, as an example, when you get your language back, you can go out to people who already know you professionally. Your lovely group of your super squad is a really great example of who to experiment with. And you say to them literally, hey, I met this crazy lady who is teaching me how to talk about why I'm awesome. I would like to practice with you. And I say the word practice on purpose because, one, it means you can be a bit of a train wreck to begin with, because we're all pretty bad at doing it this way because it's different. Second of all, it means that the person knows that this isn't the final product and they're not going to want to immediately give you feedback, which is not what you need at this point. What you want to know when you practice out loud how you're talking about yourself is, what did they hear? And that's the question I challenge everybody to ask. So you say your statement, they're probably going to go, woo, that was different. And I also think you're awesome at X and X and X. You go, thank you very much. And then you say, quick question, what did you hear? And the thing that comes out of your mouth next, out of their mouth next, is what landed. This is the thing they're going to remember. The bonus thing of asking the question, what did you hear, is it also means they get a practice session on how to talk about why you're awesome. And if there's anybody on the planet that you want to make sure understands how to talk about your value, it's the people who know you the best. So always go out and practice this with them. Bonus points, if you really want to make sure it's landed and whatever you want to be known for is really stuck in people's head, text them, email them, WhatsApp, whatever the Slack, you name it, about 48 to 72 hours after you've done this exercise, and say to them, what do you remember? And what you remember is whatever the thing that they are going to remember forever. And it's a perfect example in the world that we have today of this being really sticky for a human being. If I asked you all what, and especially for the women in the room, what Sheryl Sandberg is known for, traditionally we get lean in as a first answer and Facebook as a second. I think it's slowly starting to shift there, but for a very long time, it's what Sheryl was known for. And if you think about other leaders in the industry and what they're known for, it's usually one or two words, and that's what you're searching for as you're going through. Do you need to write a book and start a nonprofit and all this sort of stuff? Maybe no, but I think we can all agree, and this is only said with absolute love and affection, that if I asked you all to do a Rob is Rob known for, Jazzy Jacket's certainly one of them. But creating educational and balancing education and entertainment at the same time is certainly what I would say in a room that I was not in. See, and he's already doing it with, you're not a dumpster fire. You're fantastic. I'm a fan. So this then comes to, if any of you, by the way, are all like, well, hang on a second, I just saw Joanna do a transformation of some of Chris's language there really quickly. This is what I do all day. It's awesome. I get to tell people why they are fabulous. This is my superpower in the world of work. We absolutely have ways, if you don't want to do this by yourself, that you can engage with us and go through. We have a virtual experience where ultimately at the end of the day, I craft your value language. And then we also have one-on-one coaching if you want to take it to the next level. Kylie is going to drop links on both of those in the chat room. If you're interested, you can also just go straight to Joanna Bloor. What I have found in doing this over years is that this is kind of a weird and hard thing for people to do. And when they do it together, they have a lot more fun. So when I'm working with groups specifically, and whether this is a group like the AdOps group, or even I do this with teams in companies, if you guys as members of the AdOps community are interested in going through this exercise together, because I'll actually make you, well, not make you, but have you learn from each other and how you're different and how to do that, just shoot us a note either through joannabloor.com or hello@the Lab, and we're going to see if there's any interest there. If we can get enough people, we'll do a group experience, but just send us questions and we'll do that as well. I'm going to skip over that because I want to talk about that. But fundamentally, when I think about all of us, I would love you all, however you want to do this, to learn about how to talk about your value and how do you solve problems in the future, because I do think it's the direction we're going. And I challenge you all, because you all have the capabilities, to be a potentialist for somebody else. Being able to show somebody who they can be and where you see their value is one of the biggest gifts you can give somebody. And so if you are somebody who knows somebody who's been impacted by COVID-19 status and or is looking for a job, this is actually how you can help. And last but not least, I'm going to ask Kylie to drop the How Can You Help Your Friends article that we wrote recently. We give you 10 top tips on how to help other people in your network find new jobs in this world of future value. So I know we've hit the hour and we're starting to lose people. Feel free to reach out any way that you need to. I will open up for any questions for those that would like to hang out. The floor is yours. or you can jump if you've got a meeting to go to.
Well, if I could just interject real quick with a thank you. I don't want to cut off the QA, but thank you very much, Joanna. And I love all that you're doing. The one thing I'll add that I try to do and throw this out to everyone is on the site, we have a job seekers, right? Which isn't just for people looking for jobs. It's looking for people who are looking for the next opportunity, right? So learn from Joanna, work on your things, and then put it out, and I can help get that word out there. And so if that's where you want to go, that's a signal you should put out to the universe. And then what you might find is people react to that, and your next job will not just be a lateral move, it'll be a transformational move. So completely buy into and love all of that you are doing. But yes, you should ask questions, all of you. And by the way, that was the quietest I've ever been on a phone call. That was an hour long. First time ever. Just going to put that out there.
Kylie, do we have anything in chat on questions in case people are feeling a little shy?
I actually have.
No.
Oh, yeah. David, you had a question? Go ahead.
I do, yeah. It's good to see you again. I am not personally looking for a new job yet, but a couple things you said around which, again, I know all of the various application platforms are all algorithmic. They're looking for certain keywords. And when you said the importance of a cover letter, I'm just trying to balance those two in my head, because if you don't get if you don't get picked for your resume by the application, what does the cover letter matter?
Yeah, well, so this is where I don't believe, I'm a bit of a rule breaker. So yes, submit your application through the process, but like the hard work is actually finding the way in and figuring out who you can send a cover letter to. And well, I do actually have, do we have the PDF that has the how to write an awesome cover letter handy, Kylie, that we can just attach?
Yeah, I'll drop it in the chat.
Thanks. There is actually a template that I have that really helps with this, because it's kind of got a 3-step piece to it. It's one, how do you actually, and this is the way to kind of market yourself. You think about the whole concept of a sales funnel. Mm-hmm. You go, okay, so the top of funnel isn't the applicant tracking system isn't helping you. So who are the people up here? And it is your network. It's all of the people in AdOps. And what I see so often people do is make it really hard for people to help them. Like Rob just gave, like, I love in his email that he does the description of the person and what they're all about. I'm a fan of that whole approach. But when often I see people, when they say, oh, I'm looking for my next opportunity, do one of two things. One, they either just attach their resume, or when they don't actually describe what it is they're looking for. Quite often, especially the more senior you get, what are you looking for? Well, it depends is the answer. And I'm sorry, but you can't sell it depends to everybody. It just doesn't, because then I go, oh, you should hire David because he's great. What is he looking for? I don't know, but you should talk to him. Not a very compelling statement. And so in the template, we actually, I'm going to do it really fast. We go, like, say, for instance, David, you were sending this to Rob. He'd be a really great person to send this to. You go, hey, Rob, just want to give you a heads up that maybe it's time for me to transition out of the role that I have right now because I'm looking for something new. To make it easy for you to explain to other people who I am and what I'm all about and what I'm looking for, I've put some information below. The kind of problems I'm really great at solving are bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. The kind of organization that would get the best from me is bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. If anybody wants to reach me, they can reach me at X. Here's a link to my LinkedIn profile. Please go back in and judge that thing too. To make it easy for you, I've also written this entire email in the third person so that you can just copy paste it and make your own edits to make this easy for you. Yes, you're welcome, Rob. And then underneath you write, dear Rob, please fill in the name of whatever your friend is. I would like to introduce you to my friend, David. David is currently working at X, but is looking for a new opportunity. And when I looked at what he was doing and what he was capable of doing, I thought of you. The kind of problems David is really great at solving are bam, bam, bam. The kind of organization that gets the best from David is bang, bang, bang. And then you put all of the connecty thing. The key on so obviously the kind of problems you're really great at solving, you saw me do that with Chris. What kind of organization would get the best from me? The bullet point, bullet point, bullet point is a bit of your dream job. So you think, and here's an example, like I used to have a rule for myself that I would not work for a company that had more than 2,000 employees unless it was in their innovation arm. Because once you get to about 2,000 employees, shit does not move fast enough for me. I start getting bored. And when I'm bored, I'm not very good. And so I was like, okay, the kind of organization that would get the best from me is usually one that is between 100 and 1,000 employees and is looking down the funnel at a hockey stick moment and is looking for people who only think scale. That was absolutely how I would have described the kind of company that would get the best from me. I would also say, so again, thinking dream job, like one of my criteria when I went to go work at Pandora and I was interviewing with the executive team, I said to them specifically, I said, look, I said, the one thing I hate about client services and AdOps is the team is generally shit on. I said, they're basically the last people to get the last breadcrumbs in the organization. And I said, and do not get me started about the contentious relationships between the sales and the yield organization. I said, I will not run a team where the yield and pricing team is fighting with sales and fighting for their right to be right. I said, because they are. And I said, I will not have a team that is shit on. And I said, so we are going to need to invest in making sure these individuals understand that they're valued and that the relationship between sales and yield is actually a collaborative one as opposed to a contentious one. The last company had wounded me a little bit. And so would I put that long essay in the kind of organization that would get the best from me? Probably not. But I would put something where the culture and how people are treated within the organization is a priority. And I absolutely walked away from opportunities because when I talked to them about this whole thing, they're all like, what are you talking about? We never should. Like they just had a negative reaction to it. And I was like, well, you are clearly not my people. Because the other half of this whole conversation, because it's a double-sided marketplace, is you get to choose as well. But that template really sets it up so somebody, when they're reading it, especially when Rob sends it out, goes, I have those problems. That organization sounds like me. Therefore, I want to talk to David. And that's how we make each other really easy to buy. Super simple way of doing that. Did the document get dropped in the chat, Kylie?
Yep.
Yeah,
if you missed any of this or you want to share it with other people, just email us. We'll do that. Oh, Rafe, you weren't on video. I couldn't see you. You need to call me because we are overdue for a chat. I see him leaving. Any other questions?
Joanna, I just want to thank you so much. It was great.
You are more than welcome. Well, this was on a very personal level. You are still my people, and I wish I could still go around and tell people what to do in the AdOps ad tech space. It is my journey in the industry was amazing and a lot of fun, and a lot of what I teach today was built off of things that I learned working with lots of you guys. And so anytime you need some Joanna help in whatever it is you're doing, please let me know. And if any of you are still in audio and need help there, I still dork out on regular basis that area too. So
I don't think everyone in our industry recognizes that the way that the problems are thrown at us is such a skill that you can take outside of.
Oh my God.
When you go to other industries, they just don't have any of the dynamic issues. So you know, someone used the word trenches before. We've been in the trenches, and
yeah.
And I think, Joanna, you showed you can get out of it too. So.
It's part of I get it's part of the fun, but yeah, like Chris, your ability to react to complexity when often the technology hasn't caught up is so much better. And I just did a big engagement with Raytheon, who, good Lord, they create all sorts of crazy things. Nobody moves, that I can tell, at the speed. Maybe politics? Maybe politics. Yeah, superpowers, every single one of you.
We have another question in the chat from Dewey.
Yep.
She says, I'm having trouble making a distinction between who you are and what you do. How can you pull your personality forward in your elevator pitch?
Well, it kind of depends on, well, so here's the thing on pulling your personality forward is in really thinking about what is my real, and God, I hate the word authentic, but I am going to use it, but like, what is the real story of me? Often your personality can't help but shine through. I am constantly, when I'm working with people, looking for incongruity in who they are or an interesting story. Actually, I have a really great example of this. Like, I was talking with an executive who was going for chief product officer role. So really senior. They had come to me because they kept on getting to the final 2 candidates and then not getting the job. And they were a little worried it was because they had a little too much gray hair and wrinkles, and most of the hiring managers were 30. And because it was here in Silicon Valley. And I said, well, maybe. And I said, maybe the issue is they're not actually seeing your potential in the future. And so I had a conversation with them about, like, how are they answering the product officer questions that you normally have in an interview, and their answers were spot on. Like, they really knew their stuff. They were obviously super qualified. And what I said to her, I was like, look, I said, maybe you're just not being remembered. And I said, why don't you talk to me more about who you are? Like, it was like, what do you do for fun? Like, what are you good at outside of your work, building technical products? And learned that this individual was actually a hand gliding instructor on the side. And I was like, hold up. You jump off, not only do you jump off of mountains with basically a handkerchief, a coat hanger, and a prayer, but you teach other people to do that. And they laughed at me and they said, well, yeah, kinda. And I was like, well, hang on a second. Isn't the same way that we design products, the balancing design with engineering, with teaching customers, with surprise, with the unknown elements, like, doesn't that all apply in product development? And they were like, yes. And I said, great. I said, now here's what you're going to do on your next interview is when somebody starts asking you to talk about your experiences in product, you say, you know what, I'd love to talk to you about it, but I like to use the construct of hand gliding, because while I am excellent at developing and creating products, I'm also a hand gliding instructor on the side. It's what I do for fun. They then went through the whole process of talking about product iteration, but used hand gliding as an anchor throughout the whole thing, which meant at the end of the conversation, not only were they known as great product person, but they were also known as hand gliding person, which, I don't know about you, puts them, like, I'm still kind of like, you're cool and I would not do that. But then says the personality message of teacher, fearlessness, and cool, right? Which was absolutely on point with this person when it comes to their personality. And so I look at telling stories in a different way to not only help you with being memorable, but also telling people who you are. And yes, they absolutely got the job and lots of money to go with it, which you should all want that too.
Very cool.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, reach out. I'm on all the socials at Joanna Bloor. I'm a bit of a maniac there. If you haven't already and want to join the newsletter, I write about how to navigate the future working world every week. There's often crazy stuff. There's also opportunities to win free one-on-ones with me as well. They're intense. Be prepared. But we are going to let you all go. Have an awesome afternoon. Thanks for coming. And for those of you that I've known in my previous world, it was awesome to see you, sort of. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Melissa.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Joanna.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.